July 17th, 1944. The guns had stopped, but the echoes had not. Private James Miller walked through the ruins of St. Lo, where victory looked like ash and smelled of smoke. The once bustling Norman city was now a skeleton of walls and broken spires. Every street was a grave, every window a hollow eye staring at what the war had done. The air hung heavy with dust, the fine, choking kind that settled after bombardment and clung to skin, uniforms, and memory. Birds did not sing here. Even the wind seemed to move quietly, as though afraid to disturb the dead. Miller's boots crunched over brick and glass. Each step echoed in the hollowed-out streets. Around him, men worked silently, clearing rubble, carrying stretchers, marking graves. There was no celebration, no shouts of triumph, only weary faces that had forgotten how to smile. He paused near the remains of a church. Its bell lay cracked in the street, half buried beneath stone. The cross still stood, though twisted and blackened. Miller removed his helmet for a moment, as if in reverence. "We've taken St. Lo," the commanders had said. But what did it mean to take a place that no longer existed? He opened his diary, the pages dirt-streaked and frayed. Diary, July 17th, 1944. St. Lo is ours, but there's nothing left to hold. The city is dead. The air smells of stone and smoke. We walk through ruins that used to be homes. I can't tell the difference between victory and loss anymore. St. Lo had become a ghost city. The morning light filtered through dust like pale gold, painting everything in the color of memory. Miller moved with his unit through streets littered with fragments of life. A child's shoe, a broken teacup, a photograph pressed into mud. There were no civilians left to claim them. The people had either fled, hidden, or died beneath the falling sky. He could feel their presence in the quiet, the invisible eyes of those who had once called this place home. The war had passed through like a storm, leaving silence in its wake. The soldiers spoke little. When they did, their voices were low, careful, as though words might break the fragile peace that had settled over the ruins. Miller felt a strange kind of guilt standing among the wreckage. This was what victory looked like. By noon, the medics were still finding survivors. Dazed civilians crawling from cellars or shelters, blinking at the sunlight as if it were something foreign. Miller helped lift debris from a half-collapsed doorway. Beneath it, an old man emerged, covered in dust, his eyes vacant. He said nothing, only nodded once before limping away. A woman sat nearby, clutching a bundle of cloth that was no longer a living child. No one spoke. Miller watched the scene unfold in silence. The soldiers had seen death before. But this was different. This was what happened after the battle was won. Diary, July 17th, 1944. I saw a woman holding a child that wasn't breathing. She rocked it gently, as if sleep might return. We called it liberation, but what are we liberating them into? Smoke, hunger, ruin? Maybe freedom doesn't look the same when you've lost everything. As the day wore on, Miller wandered through the outskirts where the bombing had been worst. Tanks lay gutted and blackened, their armor peeled open like tin. Horses and men alike were buried under mounds of debris. In one corner, near a shattered farmhouse, he found a helmet lying beside a small diary. He didn't open it. He just brushed the dust away, placed it back down, and saluted. The war had no shortage of stories. Most ended before they could be written. He sat for a while against a crumbling wall, watching the smoke rise over the distant hills. Somewhere beyond those hills, the front was still moving forward. New towns would burn. New soldiers would fall. Victory, he thought, was a word too small for the price it demanded. Night fell slowly, casting long shadows through the broken streets. The soldiers made small fires where they could, the flames flickering against stone and steel. Miller sat with his squad in what had once been a courtyard. Someone found a bottle of wine in the wreckage. They passed it around, each man drinking in silence. The taste was bitter and sweet, like the air, like the memory of peace. A few laughed softly, more out of exhaustion than humor. One man hummed a tune from home, low and broken, until even that faded into the crackle of firewood. Miller stared into the flames. For the first time, he didn't feel fear or adrenaline, just emptiness. A space inside him where too many things had been taken away. Diary, July 18th, 1944. The night is quiet, too quiet. The city sleeps, but it feels like the dead are listening. I keep thinking about Davis, about all of them. If they could see this, what would they say? Would they call it victory or tragedy dressed in our colors? He closed the notebook, watching sparks drift upward into the smoke. The stars were dim tonight, hidden behind the haze of war. Every soldier had his ghosts. Miller's just happened to walk beside him, whispering through the ruins. At dawn, orders came down. The division would move again, south toward the next line of defense. There was no rest, no pause long enough to grieve. The war demanded motion. Miller packed his things carefully. He looked around the ruined city one last time. Somewhere, a bell clanged faintly in the distance. A survivor's signal, or maybe just the wind. He left behind a note at the base of the fallen church. To whoever finds this, we were here. We fought, we bled, we tried to build something from the ashes. If you read this, remember us not for the war, but for what we lost trying to end it. The column moved slowly through the streets, trucks grinding over broken stone. Civilians watched from doorways, hollow-eyed, wrapped in blankets. Some whispered blessings, others simply stared. Miller caught the eye of a boy no older than 12. The child stood barefoot in the rubble, clutching a toy soldier. He gave a small salute as the convoy passed. Miller returned it. That image stayed with him. A child standing amid destruction, holding on to the idea of something brave, something good. Maybe that was what hope looked like now. Fragile, battered, but still standing. By afternoon, St. Lo was a distant smudge in the haze. The road ahead twisted through the countryside, a landscape both beautiful and scarred. Fields once green were now pitted with craters. Cows grazed beside burned-out tanks. The sky was vast and strangely peaceful, as if unaware of what had happened below. The men marched quietly. The sound of boots on gravel became a rhythm, steady and hypnotic. Some hummed. Others stared at nothing. Miller just walked, lost in thought. He realized how the war changed not only the world around him, but the shape of his own heart. Things that once mattered, pride, anger, even fear, seemed smaller now. Only memory remained sharp. Diary, July 19th, 1944. We leave St. Lo behind us. What remains is silence and dust. The war moves on, but part of me stays there. among the stones, the crosses, the echoes. Davis would have hated the quiet. He liked to fill it with jokes and bad singing. I miss that noise more than anything. He looked at the horizon. The road stretched endlessly, the sky bright and empty. Somewhere ahead, another city waited, another battle. Miller closed his notebook, tucking it close to his chest. The war wasn't over. Not for him, not for anyone. But as he walked, he carried something fragile through the rubble. A small, defiant hope that someday the world might remember the silence too. St. Lo had fallen, but in its ashes, something unspoken lingered. The truth that victory and loss often shared the same face. Private James Miller and his brothers in arms moved onward, carrying the weight of what was left behind. And as the wind passed through the broken stones of St. Lo, it whispered what no general could ever say. That war ends not when the guns go silent, but when the hearts of those who survived learn how to beat again.